Hello everyone, and wishing you all health and peace of mind. To all of you who closely follow global affairs, welcome back. Today, we are not just presenting a standard piece of international news, we are going to visualize a scenario concerning one of the hottest, most volatile, and most dangerous regions on the world map. We are presenting a war game scenario, a narrative based on real military capabilities and geopolitical realities. When you hear Middle East, what comes to your mind? Endless deserts, oil wells, or perhaps never-ending conflict? The answer, of course, is all three. But the story we are telling today runs much deeper than that. This is the ultimate standoff between the world's #1 military power, the United States, and the Middle East's formidable military force, Iran. For over 40 years, these two nations have been walking a tightrope. But what if, just what if, one wrong step is taken? If the spark of war is actually ignited, what happens next? Will it be like a Hollywood movie, where the US pushes a button and wins eyes? Or does Iran possess secret weapons hidden deep within its mountains and underground tunnels that the world knows nothing about? We are going to answer these questions step by step through our simulation. If you ask most people where a war begins, they might say, when the first shot is fired. But in modern warfare, the war begins long before a single gun goes off. Weeks before the US president gives the order to attack, the war will have already started in cyberspace. According to US military strategists, if you are going to attack Iran, the first thing you must do is blind them and deafen them. Think about it. If your enemy cannot see you coming, cannot issue orders, and cannot communicate with their troops, their weapons, no matter how advanced, become useless. Therefore, weeks before D-Day, the US Cyber Command in the NSA would launch a massive offensive using viruses and malware against Iran's internet backbone, power grids, and military radar systems. Let me give you a real-world example. Back in 2010, at Iran's Natanz nuclear facility, something strange happened. The centrifuges used to enrich uranium started spinning out of control and destroying themselves. Even though no one had touched a button, Iranian scientists were baffled. Only later did the world learn this was the work of Stuxnet, the world's most advanced cyber weapon. That event proved that the US and its allies could physically destroy an Iranian facility using nothing but a keyboard. If a full-scale war were to happen now, we would see cyber attacks exponentially more powerful than the lights could go out across Tehran. Iranian generals might pick up their phones or radios only to find dead air. This is the first phase, the silent war. While the cyber war rages, there will be terrifying movements beneath the waves of the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. On the surface, the sea might look calm, just the sound of waves lapping against the shore. But 500 feet below us, Ohio-class nuclear submarines would be sitting silently, waiting like sharks, stalking their prey. Each of these submarines can carry up to 154 Tomahawk cruise missiles. The moment they receive the order, these missiles can launch from underwater, traveling over 1,000 miles to strike targets inside Iran with pinpoint accuracy. For the Iranian Navy, finding these submarines would be harder than finding a needle in a haystack. While satellites watch from above and submarines wait below, on the ground, CIA operatives and special forces would have likely already infiltrated Iran. Their primary mission, to act as the eyes for the incoming airstrikes. They would use laser painting to mark targets, identifying exactly which house a commander is sleeping in or which mountain valley hides a missile, silo sending that visual data directly to the bombers above. So, the preparations are complete. The enemy's eyes are blinded. The weapons are at the doorstep. The spies are inside the house. Now, the time has come. The moment the sky catches fire and the world holds its breath. The first 72 hours of D-Day begin now. Once the kinetic war starts, the primary objective of the US military is to achieve air superiority. This means ensuring that in the Iranian sky, nothing flies unless it is American. This phase will be the most violent opening act. On the very first night, hundreds of US aircraft would cross into Iranian airspace, but it won't be like the movies with roaring jet engines initially. The first wave will be the stealth fighters. Iran possesses Russian-made S-300 air defense systems and their own advanced Bavar 373 systems. These can detect and shoot down normal aircraft from hundreds of miles away. The US knows this. That is why they will send in their gold standard, the F-35 Lightning II and the F-22 Raptor. These planes are designed to appear on enemy radar as nothing larger than a small bird or a golf ball. Iranian radar operators might see nothing on their screens until their own radar stations suddenly explode. In military terms, this is called seed suppression of enemy air defenses. At the same time, EA-18G Growler electronic warfare planes will launch from aircraft carriers. They won't drop bombs. Their job is to jam the radar waves, turning enemy screens into static, effectively blindfolding the opponent while they are being punched. Once the air defenses are down and the US owns the sky, the second phase begins, destroying the high-value targets, specifically Iran's nuclear program. This presents a massive challenge. Facilities like Natanz and Fordo are not built on the surface. They are buried deep underground, carved into mountains, and protected by layers of reinforced concrete. A normal missile would be like a mosquito bite to these bunkers. This is where the US's Air Force plays its trump card. The bunker buster, formerly known as the GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator. Imagine a bomb that weighs 30,000 pounds heavier than a school bus, dropped from B to Spirit, stealth bombers. These weapons are designed to punch through 200 feet of earth and concrete before detonating. The explosion would be strong enough to shake the mountains themselves. You might ask, what about the Iranian Air Force? Iran still operates old American F-1 for Tomcats from the Shah's era and some Russian MiG-29s, but the technological gap is simply too wide. An F-14 would likely be shot down by an F-22 from 100 kilometers away before the Iranian pilot even knew he was being targeted. Furthermore, the US strategy would be to bomb the runways first. If a plane cannot take off, it is nothing more than a pile of metal on the ground. By the end of the first 72 hours, the skies over Iran would be covered in smoke, dominated entirely by US air power. But listeners, do not think that winning the air war means the war is over. This is just the beginning. Iran possesses a secret weapon and a strategy that could terrorize the world and cripple the US Navy. The battle for the Strait of Hormuz is about to begin, and it will be a nightmare. If you look at the map, south of Iran lies the Strait of Hormuz. It is only about 20 miles wide at its narrowest point, but it is the jugular vein of the global economy. 20% of the world's oil supply passes through this narrow channel every single day. If war starts, Iran's first and most aggressive retaliation will be to close this strait. Their policy is simple. If we cannot sell our oil, no one else will. The US Navy has massive aircraft carriers and destroyers. If the Iranian Navy tried to fight them head-on, they would lose in seconds. Iranian generals know this, so they will use swarm tactics. Imagine an elephant being attacked by 1,000 angry bees. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC Navy, has thousands of small, high-speed boats armed with anti-ship missiles, machine guns, and torpedoes. When the naval battle begins, these hundreds of small boats will swarm out from every inlet and island, attacking the US fleet from all directions simultaneously. US radar and defense systems are designed to track large targets. When hundreds of tiny, fast-moving targets appear at once, the systems can become overloaded and confused. If you shoot down 10 boats, the 11th one might get through and hit your ship. This is the US Navy's biggest headache. Then there is the silent killer. Naval mines. Iran has thousands of advanced mines. Under the cover of darkness, they would drop these mines into the strait. If a single mine explodes against a supertanker, global oil shipments stop immediately. The US would have to send in minesweepers and helicopters to clear the path, drastically slowing down their operations. While the sea is chaotic, the threat from the coast remains. The entire Iranian coastline is mountainous. Hidden within caves and tunnels are anti-ship missile launchers. These vehicles use a shoot-and-scoot tactic. They drive out of a tunnel, fire a missile at a ship, and immediately drive back inside. It makes them incredibly difficult for the US Air Force to hunt down. Let's assume the US controls the air and the sea. If the goal of the war is regime change, bombing isn't enough. You need boots on the ground. This phase is the ultimate nightmare for us generals. Why? Because Iran is not a flat desert like Iraq. Western Iran is dominated by the Zagros Mountains. These mountains are nature's fortress. It is incredibly difficult for tanks and armored vehicles to pass through the narrow mountain passes and cliffs. It creates the perfect environment for ambushes. The US would be forced into mountain warfare, similar to the most difficult days in Afghanistan. There are two main entry points. One is a land invasion from the Iraqi or Kuwaiti border, crossing into Khuzestan province. This is oil country and relatively flat, likely leading to the largest tank battles seen since World War II. The second option is an amphibious landing from the Persian Gulf, but the Iranian coast is lined with bunkers and mines, potentially turning it into a modern-day Normandy, with high casualties. If the troops make it past the mountains and reach the cities, the situation gets worse. Tehran alone has a population of over 8 million. Iran has a paramilitary force called the Basij, numbering in the millions. They blend in with civilians, turning every house and every alleyway into a fortress. US tanks entering the city would face RPGs, IEDs, and suicide attacks. Clearing a city would mean fighting host. The civilian casualties would be horrific, and the US military death toll would rise dramatically. It seems that while the US can dominate the air and sea, on the ground, they would be stepping into a quagmire. Iran would use its geography and asymmetric warfare to bleed the world's strongest military dry over countless years. But the war wouldn't stop there. Iran won't just fight defensively. The moment they are invaded, they will play their trump card. This is their proxy network across the Middle East, often called the Ring of Fire. Attacking Iran isn't like poking a beehive, it's like setting the entire forest on fire. The first flame will ignite in Lebanon. Iran's most powerful ally, Hezbollah, is estimated to have 150,000 missiles pointed at Israel. The moment the order is given, Hezbollah would rain missiles down on northern Israel. The Iron Dome defense system is excellent, but if thousands of missiles are fired at once, it cannot stop them all. This drags America's key ally, Israel, directly into the war. The second flame comes from Yemen. The Houthi rebels, using Iranian drone and missile technology, would attack Saudi Arabia and the UAE. They would target oil refineries and commercial shipping in the Red Sea. Remember the 2019 attack on the Saudi Aramco facility? This would be far worse. Dubai's skyscrapers could be at risk. The region's tourism and economic hubs would be shattered. The third flame would target US bases in Iraq and Syria. Shia militias in these countries would launch daily mortar and rocket attacks on American embassies and bases, pinning US troops down. Finally, Iran itself would launch its long-range ballistic missiles. Missiles like the Shahab-3 and Sajil can travel up to 2,000 kilometers. Their targets: the massive US airbase in Qatar, the US Navy's 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, and bases in the UAE. Iran's strategy is clear. If you attack us, your friends will burn with us. This effectively drives a wedge between the US and its Arab allies, who might refuse to let the US launch attacks from their soil. Ladies and gentlemen, based on this scenario, there is no denying that the United States has the technology and firepower to defeat Iran militarily. The Iranian Air Force would be destroyed, their navy sunk, and the government could be toppled. But what is the definition of winning? If this war happens, oil prices could skyrocket to $200 or $300 a barrel. Shipping costs would rise, causing global inflation. A global recession would likely follow immediately. Developing nations would suffer the most from fuel shortages and soaring prices. Worse yet is the aftermath. If the Iranian government falls, it creates a power vacuum. Just as ISIS rose after Saddam Hussein fell in Iraq, the collapse of Iran could lead to a massive civil war with various armed groups and terrorists fighting for control. The US would be stuck in a conflict they cannot easily exit. This is why Pentagon strategists and politicians in the White House try to avoid a full-scale war at all costs. While they are always ready for war, in reality, they prefer sanctions, cyber attacks, and surgical strikes. Iran is like a tiger's tail. If you pull it, the bite back is devastating. And so, in this Persian Gulf chess game, no one dares to call checkmate. They just continue to watch and wait. That concludes our presentation of Storm on the Horizon. May the world be at peace. Goodbye for now.